Today, Keir Starmer will be giving his keynote speech at the Labour Party conference. He's set to address this his first as Prime Minister.
Yes, and he's going to try and strike a more positive note if he can, as he sets out his ambition to build a new Britain, urging tough decisions are only a short-term step, but they will lead to national renewal.
Now it follows the Chancellor Rachel Reeves yesterday, whose address was interrupted by hecklers as she pledged to no return to austerity and defended the recent winter fuel payment cuts as a hard but a fair choice, she said.
There will be no return to austerity. And I made the choice to means test the winter fuel payment so that it is only targeted at those most in need. I know that not everyone in this hall or in the country will agree with every decision that I make. But I will not duck those decisions.
Also set to speak today is Home Secretary Yvette Cooper, as she announces a crackdown on crime.
Live from Liverpool, our political correspondent Catherine Forster this morning. Catherine, good morning.
Yes, good morning, both of you. It's been a rather strange conference in some ways here in Liverpool because, of course, it's 14 years since Labour were last the party of government. And last year at this conference, there was a mood of energy, of optimism. And here they are in power. But it's not going brilliantly. The last week or so, particularly overshadowed with rows about donations. We've had a lot of doom, a lot of gloom. At the conference, actually, it's rained pretty much solidly for 2 days, though it's stopped now. So they're desperately trying now to give us all a little bit of hope, basically, to paint a picture of optimism, saying that all these tough choices that they're going to have to take, the winter fuel allowance being just one of them, we expect there to be many more, come the budget at the end of October, that they're all for a purpose, that we're going to feel the benefits of it down the line. So we'll be hearing from the Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, talking about cracking down on knife crime at 10 o'clock. The Prime Minister will be speaking at 2 o'clock, and he's going to say, basically, stick with us, there's light at the end of the tunnel. One of the things he's likely to say is, I know this country is exhausted by and with politics. I know that the cost of living crisis drew a veil over the joy and wonder in our lives, and that people want respite and relief. Now, of course, they're going to stress there's tough choices. Expect to hear a lot of them. Pledges of a government of service. One thing that he will be announcing is a Hillsborough law. Now, of course, in this city, particularly when 97 Liverpool fans were crushed at that tragedy in Hillsborough, those people have fought for justice for decades. He made a promise to them that he would bring in a law. He's going to say he will do that by the next anniversary, a duty of candour that will basically promise criminal sanctions to officials or bodies who don't act correctly, who try to cover up or block right being done. I think that will bring heart to some people because again and again we see these terrible sort of failures of state, Hillsborough, infected blood, the post office, etc. And these people fight for justice for many, many years, and in most cases they're still waiting, but trying to turn the page on this doom and gloom, trying to move on from the donations rows. Let's see how that goes.
OK, we'll see how everything goes. Catherine, I know you're there all day for us, and we'll have full coverage of the conference throughout the programming here today on GB News.
Yeah, and you can watch the Prime Minister delivering that speech. That will be live, 2 p.m, and you can watch it on Good Afternoon Britain. I think the question will be really, adding in this kind of note of optimism to his speech at the 11th hour. Will that work after the weeks and weeks of doom and gloom that he's been sort of putting out there? Is it possible to kind of move this train this freight train of doom that he's got under motion? And
I pretend it isn't going to happen. No, but then they're all frauds. They're all frauds. They all talk nonsense and they treat us like morons, as if we can't understand what's needed, what's not needed, or whatever. But one thing's for sure, if you earn over 40 grand a year, they'll hammer you. You'll be done. So that's that. That'd be my analysis of that.
I don't think you're probably wrong. We will find out in October with that budget as well. But will you find it optimistic? What are you looking for from the Prime Minister today? Let us know, gbnews.com/your say. Should we take a look at some of the front pages on this Tuesday morning? The Daily Mail leading with RMT boss Mick Lynch saying we will seize control of the UK economy. Telegraph
reports on the Prime Minister assuring us there is hope for a prosperous future despite current economic challenges.
The Express is leading with Labour facing criticism for postponing a vote on the potential removal of winter fuel payments for pensioners.
Here's the Times. It opens with Labour's latest promise to crack down on benefit fraudsters. I mean, if in doubt, let's just attack the benefit fraudsters. Why do they never get any of these benefit fraudsters?
Well, this is true. And The Guardian is leading with the Prime Minister seeking to lift the public mood ahead of his conference speech this afternoon.
Well, honestly, it just makes me that benefit fraudsters thing. You just hear it every year.
It's a bit similar to the people who are tax avoiders. Those are the two go-tos. We've got no other ideas. We'll go after those people who avoid paying tax and the benefit scroungers. Well, if we actually did that successfully, we would have done that a long time ago.
Yes.
It was that easy.
It's always one to pull out of the hat. Claire Muldoon is here with us this morning, and Theo Usherwood. Very nice to see you both.
Thank you, you too.
What do you make of them going for benefit fraudsters? Anybody got a view on that?
Well, they need to raise some extra money, and they're thinking they can get £1.6 billion out of it by going after benefit fraudsters. And they're looking to go in. They're looking to give the Department of Work and Pensions the same rights as HMRC to go into people's bank accounts and to look and to get.
Do you know what the problem with that is? They've got nobody working for that department or the tax department or all these places that they're going to get this money from, and they've suddenly realised they've got no staff to actually do it.
Well, yes, we heard from Rachel Reeves yesterday that we're not going to have austerity 2.0, following on from, of course, Cameron and Osborne back in 2010, that she doesn't want, hinting more towards tax rises than spending cuts. But the government is trying to, it needs to find more money, and it needs to fill this £22 billion black hole that, of course, is disputed, but when it comes to the inheritance from the Conservative Party. And one of the ways that they're doing this, and I think there is a feeling also that if you look back to the election campaign, that actually Labour didn't necessarily put forward a plan when it came to welfare. And you listen to what the Conservatives were saying, and they were talking about, bringing in experts to decide whether you were fit to work rather than just leaving it to your GP, the fact that you had to find a job after 12 months, and that Labour didn't have a similar plan. And I think what they're looking, when we'll hear obviously from what Keir Starmer has to say later, but when you look at this particular idea, I think they're trying to fill that gap from their manifesto back before the election.
It always gives the impression, it always makes me think, there'll be some scrounger in the street who's scratching himself and, he's out
watching daytime TV,
cleaning cars and whatever during the day, and he's claiming his income as well, benefit fraud. I don't believe it exists on the scale that they're talking about.
I don't believe it does either. And I'll tell you something else. I think when the Conservatives tried to crack down on benefit fraud, the left were saying, oh, my goodness me, you're affecting the most vulnerable in society. You can't do that. Again, it's hypocrisy we're seeing from this current regime. Utter hypocrisy.
But is this because Rachel Reeves yesterday, again, trying to paint herself almost a bit as a Margaret Thatcher, this Iron Lady,
first
saying we're not going to tax
Chancellor.
workers, so we're in this budget, they're looking at everyone else that they can, squeeze, whether that's pensioners, whether that's special education.
No. If you earn any sort of decent salary, you're not regarded as a worker. That's the whole thing.
You're not the hard-working family.
You'll not be regarded as a hard-working person at all.
But I don't think they know what a hard-working family is. I don't think they can identify. I mean, she was banging on yesterday about change. She said that they're the party for change. They're the party for the worker. They don't understand.
Well, I was just reading in the paper this morning, Keir Starmer's just paid off his mortgage last Monday.
Exactly, £2 million house.
But whilst in opposition, he'd been accusing Rishi Sunak of being out of touch with ordinary people who were seeing mortgage rises. enterprises. They're all a political elite. That's
it's
just
the
a fact of
hypocrisy.
life.
But I have to say, I think the fronts of the papers now at least are getting more optimistic. At least we're seeing a myriad of stories
let's see
now.
how long that lasts.
Exactly. It is for today.
Well, that's, I mean, you talk about light at the end of the tunnel here. This is the front page of the Telegraph, which is exactly those words. So he's expected, Theo, to tell us all today things are going to get better after telling us that things weren't going to get better. But
yes, I think there's a danger, and this is something I remember Andy Haldane, who's the former chief economist at the Bank of England, was saying a few weeks back, was that it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you're always talking the country down, if you're always talking about the doom and the gloom and the fact that there's going to be a painful budget to come, that actually what that does is it has the net effect of people feeling much more cautious about whether they're going to go to the shops, much more cautious about their own personal spending, and then of course that then trips into
Jeremy Hunt yesterday saying that.
Yes.
He said business confidence is vanishing under the government.
And at the same time, you've got a lot of noises off from businesses worried about this new deal for workers, where we could see further, introduction of restrictions which will make it harder for businesses, make them more cautious about taking on workers, taking on new employees, new staff. And I think that's potentially problematic. And I think what Keir Starmer is going to try to do in his speech today is to set out a much more positive vision to try and instill a bit more confidence.
Do you know what the Gen Zs would call that? Manifesting, wouldn't they? They would say they're manifesting it all.
Yes.
And there's no doom and gloom with Muldoon, so let's get that in the headlines.
OK, well, where do you stand on the unions? The Mail, their front page says, we will seize control of the UK economy. What do you think now of the new position the unions find themselves in?
Well, they present in a very, very strong position. It's more like the government of Harold Wilson than Tony Blair, isn't it, at the moment? And Mick Lynch, of course he's going to say that, isn't he? It's almost as if he's manifesting now too. Next he'll be having an oat milk latte. But there's good things in this as well. I mean, I like the abolition of zero-hour contracts. I think they do no good at all to families. They do no good to society. You cannot build a family on a zero-hour contract. You cannot build society on a zero-hour contract. Fine for the students, not for parents, OK, especially. But they do have claws of steel into the government. I mean, yesterday as well, the optic for Rachel Reeves, the first female Chancellor of the Exchequer. I mean, has she not known what politics has been like before? They've had very powerful women in politics. But then she also said that we're going to crack down on this and we're going to do that. And I just think, really, I don't know what you think you can do. And then the nurses, then just after that speech, they've rejected the 5.5%. So I really think the optic is not good. I think the unions are too powerful. They're going to gain more power. Because it is a weak government.
I think it was interesting that the vote was delayed yesterday on trying to reverse this winter fuel payments thing. Obviously non-binding, but a big embarrassment for Sir Keir Starmer, who's obviously giving his speech today, if it had gone ahead yesterday. It's now going to happen when he's safely over in New York for the UN General Assembly. The fact that that was moved, though, goes to show that, yes, they are in bed with Labour. Of course the unions are.
Yes.
But actually they don't perhaps wield as much power as they are pretending. Because they would have had that vote
Why
yesterday.
is everybody so anti-union? I don't really understand this at all. It's not a good
I'm
thing.
I'm not anti-union. I'm saying...
But
I don't think anyone is.
The newspapers will come out and make it all anti-union. I mean, the unions are there for workers' power and workers' rights and the weak and the oppressed and...
Exactly, which isn't always in the national interest, though, because when you talk about pay disputes, you look at this black hole.
You're great talking about the economy and the national interest.
I'm trying to explain. Well, yeah, but that's the difference between the union and the Labour Party. That's the tension, isn't it? That they're supposed to be, doing things for the good of the country, whereas the modus operandi for a union is for the individual worker. And these two things aren't always...
No, but also under this regime, they actually they'll kill small and medium businesses. They will. SME, small, medium enterprises.
Who's going to kill those?
The unions will, because they'll be nigh on impossible to get a decent workforce coming in. We've got other stories here saying that Gen Zs don't want to be managers. They've got the quietness. They don't want to, bring their...
Conscious unbossing, I was reading this morning.
But
and I don't think
governments
unions
are
will
very
help
good
that.
at killing small and medium businesses with bureaucracy and tax.
Well, we're looking at what the proposals are from Andrew Gwynn, the Public Health Minister, when it comes to pubs, small and medium businesses. And you know, there were 18 pubs a week closed last year, and now they're looking at potentially restricting hours. I think there is a recognition, and just from Wes Streeting previously, because I know they're also looking at banning the smoking in pub gardens and restaurants. And he seemed to be striking a note of caution a few weeks ago when he talked about a national conversation when it comes to that particular aspect of banning smoking in outdoor spaces.
Tell us more about this, Theo, because this is the front page of the Telegraph as well, and they're saying that pubs could be forced to close doors early under measures to target harmful drinking. Now, you're right, the big report yesterday about the taxation on pubs and the amount of pubs, 60 a month or whatever, closing down, absolutely horrendous. How's this going to help that situation?
So this is, from the story that's appeared today, this is coming from Chris Whitty, who's the Chief Medical Officer advising the government, and he's saying that at the moment the NHS is dealing with 40% of its output is dealing with preventable diseases. That could go up to 60%. So we're going to see a huge drive from this government as part of the NHS reforms to get a handle on diseases that could be prevented, things like heart disease, so that people don't end up in hospital and they deal with it outside. And that's going to mean restrictions, and this is what Andrew Gwynn's saying, on pubs, so we spend less time drinking.
It's a really interesting talking point, and I sort of put it out to the audience this morning, because we're now accepting, aren't we, that smoking as society, kind of most people say smoking's bad for you, and it's probably less commonplace. We're certainly seeing a generation of youngsters, admittedly all vaping, but smoking's on its way out, really. People are a bit more reticent to give up drinking, in my experience. I don't know what you think, but people don't want to be told that it's bad for them.
Are they getting the evils of drink from pubs? Or it's what they do themselves, going to the off-licence and drinking at home and whatever. I suspect that pubs are not the biggest problem.
They're not.
There's also a huge community aspect to pubs. You know, people go to pubs, they bring people together, and it's not, you know, most pubs now serve food, and they are a place where you can actually meet people in person.
Yeah. No,
which is a great thing.
Yes, rather than Zoom.
Absolutely.